So, Lorraine, what is the current state of the job market from a candidate point of view? What are you hearing from your clients?
Yeah. I think it depends a lot on what line of work you're in. We're definitely seeing a lot of cuts in some places, like tech is one of those places, certainly. So, it is taking a little bit of time, but I can tell you we've had a lot of successes with clients still landing jobs and even negotiating more money. I still think that things are slowly getting better and starting to improve, but you're going to see some varied results, perhaps, depending on the line of work that you are in right now. So, my advice to candidates still is if you are in need of a job, it is still a good time to look. It's a continual process. We always want to kind of have one eye open for an opportunity and always be looking and always be networking, at least to some degree, sometimes more passively than others. But there are industries that are cutting, but there are industries that are hiring too. So I think if you feel like it makes sense for you and you are looking for work, definitely get yourself out there and continually be networking and looking for opportunities. So definitely keep looking, keep going at it.
So it sounds like if you're proactive and you're ready for the next opportunity, not to wait until you get the pink slip or do that. Just get out there, start being proactive with your career, managing your career, and that does, I think, two things. One, it opens up opportunities, as well as it tells the current company you're available to other companies. So if they want to keep you, they need to work with you and
Yep.
to keep you inside the organization before they lose you to something else. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, being proactive is one of the best skills that you can harness in your career. You always have to advocate for yourself. And so one of the biggest things that I'm always telling clients is that you need to be prepared for that next step before you really need it. So what does it mean to be proactive? It means having your documents ready to go and up to date and not waiting until you are unemployed to then go, oh, I need to get my resume updated, because we often lose a lot of time when that happens. So I think that being proactive in terms of always having an updated resume is really important. And then always continually having conversations with your network, setting up quarterly calls with maybe your top 5 to 10 connections, something like that, so that you're always touching base with people and not feeling like, oh, I need to reconnect with my network now that I need a job. If you never lose the connection, it's there for you, and it's you hit the ground running when you need to look for a position. So yes, those who are the most proactive tend to be the most employable and have the most prospects in their job search, without a doubt.
It kind of speaks to what we talked about in our last interview. For those who haven't seen it, you can definitely find it on our YouTube channel. Is that you got to run your career like a CEO runs a business. You got to constantly be looking for opportunities to make that next move before you have to. Just like Lorraine said, before you have to make these moves now. And so that kind of brings us to our interview today. Is that here we're about recession-proof your career. Is what are the things that you can do to not be so concerned about a recession? And if you're doing the proactive things, as Lorraine's suggesting, that sounds a lot of like what we can do to make sure that we're okay. So if you're not a member, please subscribe and like to the channel so we can grow this channel and provide this opportunity to get for information for other people. As well as I'd like to introduce Lorraine. I know Lorraine. So Lorraine, why don't you just give people a little bit of a background about yourself and how they can work with you?
Yeah, so I'm the owner and CEO of Career UpRising. We have been in business since 2015, so 8 years, pretty much this month, actually. And we have helped hundreds and hundreds of professionals in many fields. Typically, they're at least mid, if not late career, but it's all different industries, from marketing, sales, supply chain and manufacturing, to technology. Whatever it is you do, if you're in that kind of that mid, even late career, 50, 60 plus spot, that is really, really who we work with. And we help with resume writing, coaching, and even career assessments. I have a wonderful team behind me at this point that's really, and brings their own areas of expertise to really help you gain confidence, gain clarity, and direction and knowledge in your job search. So it's all about helping that get out of that mid-career rut that a lot of us
Right.
get into.
And it's just being proactive. If you're looking for a job, don't wait till you need a job. It's time to be proactive and definitely get out there and get with it. Which brings us to our first question. which is, what steps can someone take to recession proof their career, or said a different way, create job security? What are some things that someone can do?
Oh, absolutely. So, number one is expanding your skill set. All right. So, first, identifying what are the most critical skills that are needed in the line of work that I am in, and not just to do the job that you're in, but we always want to be thinking about what is the next level up, right? So, if you are thinking about career advancement, you don't want to just master the job that you're in. That's not enough. You want to start mastering the next level job and demonstrating that you can do that job before you get in it. So think about what is the next level up job in my career that I might be interested in, even if it's not immediate, even if it's 6 months or a year down the road. And what are the skills that I might need to obtain that? And how can I get those skills right now before I'm in that position? Because if you can get the skills now for that next level job, you've already positioned yourself for it. So I think being proactive in that sense, in terms of, all right, how can I improve the skills for the job that I'm in now? And what new skills can I obtain to advance my career to that next level? Or maybe it's not career advancement. Maybe you are interested in pivoting to a different industry and making a lateral move. Well, what are the skills that you need for that industry? Okay, so think about what your next career move might be and what skills you need and how you can obtain them right now. Or is there somebody who can mentor you? Are there courses that you need to take or certification? Gaining those things now will make you more competitive for that role when the opportunity comes along. So the first thing is always expanding your skill set. And especially if you're in anything that uses any kind of technology, we all know how fast that changes. And AI is changing a lot of things. So we always want to be staying up to date with technology, but it may not always be a technology skill. It could just be even your management and your leadership skills, whatever you might need. So expanding your skill set is number one. And then you're hearing me say this a lot throughout the whole interview. Expanding your network is one of the best things that you can do to recession-proof your career. Having connections is so valuable because at the end of the day, people still get people jobs. I know we have job boards and they do play a role, absolutely, but behind that job board is a person still. And somebody's going to interview you and talk to you if you're going to make it all the way to getting that job. So relationships are still key. They haven't gone away. People are still behind the technology of hiring. So remember that and don't think that, just applying on job boards is enough. That's only one strategy. You still want to have relationships and have those play a role in generating job leads for you. So always be expanding your skills and always be expanding your network. And even just those two things go a long, long way to increasing your employability, both in the short and the long term.
So it sounds like someone needs to have a career strategy, something that where they planned out, and it sounds crazy. And I remember when I first started, someone told me, plan out the next 20 years. Just, literally plan out the next 20 years, because at that, let's say 3 to 5 year point where you're expecting a promotion, if it doesn't show up, it's time to move to a different company. As well as you talked about several times, is that creating those skills you need for that next level. If you don't know what that next level is, you don't know what skills you need.
Right.
So one thing when you were talking about, I thought of, how do I find this kind of information? What are some resources available to me at my fingertips that I can look to find out what is my next level and what do I need to do to get to that next level? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways. So one, I at the most basic level, I would go if you know what the job is, but that you might be interested in, but you don't know what skills you need. First, go find a couple of job descriptions online from anywhere. They don't even have to be local, that are just representative of what you think you might like to achieve, and grab a couple of them, not just one. You want to sample of maybe at least 3 or 4 and look for themes. So these are the dominant themes and then the keywords and the skills that I'm seeing over and over again when I do a survey of these job descriptions. So that's the most basic thing. Another thing you can do is there are a lot of online resources and websites that help you do research on career paths. And ONET is one of them, and O stands for occupation. So if you just search ONET, it's from the Department of Labor, it'll come right up. There's a lot of great information there about nearly every career path. There's a database of careers and all the skills that you need, a typical day in the life, all the things, what a training is required. There's a wealth of information that you can get there as well. And then the last thing you can do is talk to your network. Is there somebody that you know that's in that next level position that you want, or working in that industry that you are interested in? Why don't you ask them? Why don't you do an informational interview and ask them, what are the most critical skills needed? If I wanted to make a transition from here to here, what would you recommend? What should I focus on? Somebody who's in that career or in that position is that's the best source of information. So I would say a combination of talking to people and doing some informational interviews, but also seeing what you can find online through some websites and also job boards and sample job descriptions.
Yeah, I grabbed the URL real
Oh,
quick.
you got it.
Put
Oh,
it
yeah,
on the,
yeah. I think it is .org. Yeah.
Yeah, I just pulled it up. Yeah, it's got find occupations and all kinds of good things that
Yeah.
people can find career resources. Plus, scm.jobs is a great career resource for those in the supply
Yes.
chain career field. One thing you keep bringing up is networking people and talking to people. And with the pandemic and social media like LinkedIn, it makes it very easy for someone to be very active without being very productive. We talked about
Yeah.
this before. So when we talk about networking, I hear that we need to get face to face with people. What are some ways people can get face to face and start to expand their network? What are some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think so the first thing I would recommend is, especially if this is a new skill for you and you're not used to networking in a real structured way, start small. So go through your contacts, go through, LinkedIn, phone, email contacts, and pick, it can be a small number, maybe just 5 people that and start with them and just reach out and do a virtual meeting, or if you can meet with them in person, that's even better, and just catch up for coffee. Just kind of exercise that muscle of getting in touch with people, finding out how you can help them, what's going on with them, and then sharing your career story, your goals, where are you at. Let it organically come in to the conversation. We don't have to do it in such a way where it's overly formal and structured and asking for a job. Just start having coffee dates with people, or having Zoom calls with people. And it's more fun, and it also is just more comfortable for everybody. And you can weave your career situation into that conversation when they say, what's going on with you? How are you?
Right.
Well, I'm actually in a job search right now. It's kind of what I'm going through a transition, and just let it come up in the conversation. I think that's the best thing I would do. Yeah, just start small and reach out to a handful of people and go from there.
And don't make it complicated. You have if you're in a church, you have your local church or any other organizations, your kids teams. If you have kids involved in sports and that kind of stuff, their school, PTA, all those different organizations where you're actually talking to people. Just start to make that connection as personable as it can be. And people can't help you if they don't know you need help. They can't find a job for you if they don't know you want or need a job. So those are all
that's
great
perfect.
tips.
I say that to clients all the time. More people would help you. You'd be surprised if they knew that you needed help, or if they knew that you were looking. But if they don't know you're looking, they're not going to think of you when that opportunity comes up. It just makes sense. They're going to think you're fine. You already have a job.
Yeah, they're not thinking of you, right?
Yeah.
You got to let people know. You got to let people. Which brings us right into the next conversation: is what steps can someone take to make themselves more employable and attractive to employers in the short term? What are some
Yeah,
thoughts there?
I think that one of the most perhaps overlooked or underrated aspects of this is soft skills. So I want you to focus on developing your soft skills. And what does that mean, just in case somebody's not sure? So a soft skill is something that it's a skill that's a little bit more intangible. Things like communication, problem solving, critical thinking. It's highly transferable to different lines of work and different industries. And it feels more like a personality characteristic a little bit. It's kind of some of those intrinsic characteristics that you have, versus something like knowing exactly how to use a certain software system. That's more of a hard skill, right? But being able to exercise discretion, or have good writing skills, or communication, those things are more soft skills. Even just judgment and discretion. So those are the skills that are really, really desirable by employers, because they're very hard to train. You're going to be expected to come to the job with that emotional intelligence and with those soft skills already. They can train you more on the job specific skills, but not so much on decision making and discretion and problem solving and things like that. You need to come to the job with that already. And those are the skills that you're going to demonstrate in the interview. And soft skills are often what will differentiate a person from somebody else in the interview, because you can't demonstrate soft skills so much on a resume. That's a little bit more about the functions that you in the hard skills that you perform. But when you are communicating with somebody, when you are in an interview, they're assessing your personality and they're assessing your soft skills as well. So that's your time to shine with that. And that really can be the determining factor between you and another candidate who has a really similar resume. So keep that in mind, that that is what employers are really looking for. It's harder to train. You need to have it. And that's oftentimes the deciding factor in an interview. So developing your soft skills will take you very, very far. There's something that you can discern very quickly when you speak with somebody. You get a good vibe, you like talking to them, you can tell that they're confident and competent. That's what employers are looking for.
Yeah, a couple of things on that. One, soft skills cannot be replaced by AI. I know it's all the buzz right now, right? Artificial intelligence and how people are how that's going to replace people in there. So developing your soft skills is something that cannot necessarily be replaced by a computer, because computers can only do what you tell them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely, and that's something we can talk about probably in another interview, is the impact of AI and how to differentiate yourself from a computer. So
Yes.
you don't get absorbed into this AI or pushed out by a computer, because they can do certain things, but they can't do everything. And I think the soft skills is one of those things they can't do.
Yeah.
Another point I wanted to bring up was ageism.
Okay.
And what I mean by this is that those of us with more experience and wisdom, I would consider myself in that category, have these soft skills. We have the maturity and the ability to develop them. I was watching something the other day, and they talked about the younger generation not having these soft skills, the work ethic, these things that the employers are actually looking for right now. They're looking for loyalty. They're looking for someone that can, it sounds basic, but show up on time and do the hard work. And the soft skills have communication and be able to fill out a conversation, not necessarily just read a book and regurgitate an answer. What are some of your thoughts or things that you're seeing in regards to ageism in a positive way? What are some things
Absolutely.
that you're
Age can be an advantage. Absolutely. But you need to feel that within yourself and believe that your age is an advantage. And I think that you need to figure out, as you said, what are those characteristics or skills that I have that perhaps the younger generation doesn't have? And how can I lean into that? And how can I talk more about
right?
that and make that the focal point of my interview and make sure that those skills come through? Because older workers do have a lot of wisdom. They do have a lot of experience, and you can speak to that experience and connect those dots from how that experience translates into solving the employer's problems, right? So you want to think about what are the problems that this employer has, and how have I solved those in the past? How do I have the experience already to solve something similar that maybe a younger person might know intellectually but hasn't actually really done yet? So be prepared to give specific examples of how you can solve the employer's problems and how you have that certain quality, that work ethic, that emotional intelligence, because that is something that can't be trained and that can't be done by AI. And it does vary generation to generation. I will agree with you on that. There are some differences. So lean into that a little bit. And I can say that as a millennial, technically, I'm an old millennial. But there are some differences. Okay. And each generation has its strengths, right? We all have
Right.
one of the strengths of the older generation. So make sure to focus on that.
Yeah, it kind of brings. So I saw at a conference one time where they talked about all the complaints the older generation has about the younger generation in today's in the 2000s, and then
Yeah.
they went back in the 1950s and showed the same articles from like Time magazine or Life, the same complaints from that age generation to the younger
Yeah.
generation. So it's all the same
It is all
cyclical
the same.
age
Yeah.
as we
Yeah.
as we grow
Each
up. They
generation's always
complain about
going
the younger,
through.
and it's all different.
Yeah.
Of course. Which, yeah, I think, and we come leading into the next conversation, which is about long-term job security. And I think that speaks to the ageism that we were talking about, as well as our younger viewers who are watching, is that how do we differentiate ourselves, or what steps can we take to create job security in the long run? And I think this is a timely conversation, especially when companies are looking, I've got to reduce my workforce by a certain amount because the numbers tell me. Despite how I
Mhm.
feel, and I don't like or dislike anyone, I've been told to cut 10% or
Yeah.
20% or whatever that number is from up
Yeah.
above, or just sales revenue has told me I'm gonna cut people because I can't afford more people. How do I assure that I'm not on that list that's going to be cut? What steps can I take?
Well, I think that making sure first is that you're performing the best that you can, and you want to be as indispensable to your employer as possible. And so, making sure that you, again, as I said, I mean, it's almost like a broken record, making sure your skills are up to date, that you are able to do the job that you're in, and even better, some other jobs. So, I would say, the next job up, perhaps. But I would say make sure to just expand, learn new skills that maybe aren't required by your job but could be useful. And a lot of people, I hear this too, they'll say all of my connections are at one company because I've been in that company for 15 years, or all of my connections are in one industry because I've worked in that industry my whole career. I want you to break out of that and just start making connections with people that maybe you wouldn't ordinarily, right? So if you're interested in the healthcare industry, start making connections there. If the work that you do maybe could be transferable there. So in the long run, branch outside of that comfort zone of your company or the industry that you're in, even if you're not sure if you're ever going to work in that industry or for that other company. I think it's good to just cast a wide net and just be open-minded when we think about job opportunities or who we want to connect with in our network or what skills we should obtain. It's a continual process. We always want to be working on our professional development. So it's really kind of this, honestly, the same things that we talked about before. Always expanding your skill set as best you can, staying up to date with technology, continuously building and nurturing relationships, performing the best you can in your job, but then also keeping one eye open for other opportunities. All of those things, it's really kind of the sum of the parts, right? We want to try to do all of those things as best we can, and that will all equate into being more employable and having better career prospects in the long run.
Yeah, for those in the supply chain career field, don't forget you work with vendors day in and day out. Those are other companies that may have opportunities for you that your current
Absolutely.
company, when they go there, to reach out to them. And something else I thought about is be that go-to person, the person who's willing to stay late, come in early, do the extra things, learn the extra skills, put in that time, invest in the company, and they'll invest back in you. Because I've found in my experience and wisdom is that professionals are professionals are professionals. The people that get the job done always get the job done, and other professionals can recognize those professionals.
Mhm.
Where we know what we look like, and we know that if I reach out to somebody who's a go-to person, a star player, they can do that job. If they'll do what needs to get done, they've committed to
Yes.
the company, they've committed to the mission, they see the vision and where it needs to go, and they're part of that, and are willing to invest to be part of that, stay part of that. So I guess I would say two messages there. One, be the go-to person, or if you're not the go-to person, if you're the one clocking in at 8 a.m. right on the dot, and clocking out at 5 p.m. right on the dot, you're demonstrating that you are there for a job. And so long as you do that job, they're going to keep you. And when they go to reduce, they're going to look for people who are here for a career.
Yeah.
And those career members show up a little early and they stay a little bit late. They are there to make things happen. Do you see that with your clients? Does that kind of start to, because it sounds like the clients that work with you are professionals. They're the
Mhm.
ones that are investing in their career. They're taking the
Mhm.
extra step to maintain and find opportunities before they need them. What are some, how do you see that personality, the professional, we would call them?
Oh, absolutely. Typically, the kind of person who's going to come and hire a coach is usually pretty proactive and usually is willing to make an investment in themselves and their career and cares very much about their career prospects. I do sometimes see people who are a bit reactive. Maybe they've been unemployed for a while and they wanted to try it on their own and it didn't work. And now they're in a panic and they're like, I need a resume immediately and all these things. We do to get those, and we're happy to help those people. The people who are most successful, though, are the ones who come to us, well, I'm still employed, and I hear it a lot. They'll say, but I feel like the writing is on the wall. The company's going through changes. We've had some leadership changes. I don't know what's going to happen. I hear that a lot more. So yes, and I always want to reward that and say, good for you for being proactive. Now is the time. Because here's one other little tidbit that people forget about, right? It's so much easier to update your resume with specific facts, metrics, quantifiable achievements when you're still in that job. And why is that? Because you still have access to that information. You still have access to the systems and all the programs that you use that have a lot of information about the company and the things that you've been working on. It is always smart to continuously update your resume while you're at that job. Document that achievement, because you're going to forget about it. And then you're going to go, well, how much did I increase profitability by? It was 6 months ago and I don't have access to anything at the company anymore. You're not going to know. So your resume is not going to be strong. That's why it's really important to put a note on your calendar or something, maybe once every 3 months, something like that, to go document over the last quarter, what did you do at your job? What were the numbers? What were the metrics that you helped achieve? It's fresher in your mind and you have access to the information, because once you're not there anymore, we're all relying on memory. And that's really hard. And I've been there as well. So that's one little tidbit that can help you both in the short and the long run. And one more reason why you want to be proactive and update your resume while you're still at that company, even before you think that you need it. And people don't think about that, but those are the strongest resumes where people are you know what, let me look up that information. Let me see, what was that number, that percentage that we had last quarter? And then they can put that in their resume.
Yeah, I think this kind of speaks also to what you should be doing anyway. If you want job security, you should be noting your achievements and communicating those achievements with your management so they see that you're doing things, right? That you're meeting the objectives they've laid out for you. You're proactively talking about that to make sure you're on track. And if those objectives need to change, then you can change them now, or earlier. And the reason I bring that is because I know back in my early days, I assumed my boss knew what I was doing. And then when it came down to review, they missed probably, I'd say 50% of the actual achievements I had because I assumed they saw me do that. But you got to remember, the boss is looking at 20, 50 people, and they're writing down and evaluating all these people, and you're just one of those 50. How do they really know what you've done? Only way they know is what they read inside that job evaluation. So it sounds like it's a kind of a twofold opportunity.
It is. Well, a lot of employers these days, with performance reviews, it's actually a self-review, which I always thought was odd, but that's a trend now. You're writing your own review. I'm like, what? But when I was still in the workforce, this is maybe 8 years ago, 9 years ago, actually even more. No, it was even more than that. We started doing that. It was one company. I was like, okay, but I think that's happening more and more. So in a way, it's good because you need to advocate for yourself. You need to know what you have done. And you're right. Your boss has how many direct reports? They're not going to see and know all of that. So I want you to have a document that you go back to, that's, call it whatever you want, career accomplishments, and just put bullet points and things that you do. And if you do get a performance evaluation, and I say if you do, because some companies, unfortunately, these days are not great about that, hang on to it. Make sure you have a copy of it, because that can be really good for resume writing and interview prep in the future as well, because sometimes that can refresh your memory about kudos and awards and different things that you got in there as well. So hang on to those.
Just like a business owner would, accolades, accomplishments, results, to talk about getting new business and business development, you have those things lined up ready to go to say, well, have you done this before? Can you show me results? Exact same thing. So that mindset of being a CEO of your own career, is bubbling up again.
Yeah,
Would you?
like a company would have a statement of capabilities or something like that with
Right.
testimonials and whatever they can do. I have things like that. I still have to do this, you guys, even though I'm a business owner. Like you said, I still have to go through a performance evaluation. It just looks different, but I still have to
Right.
do all of this. Yeah.
Our customers are evaluating us and they vote with their pocketbook, right? They're the ones that say, yes, I like you. I'll keep you employed or I'll keep working with you and paying you money or no. So, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, no, I joke with people, but that, it seems like maybe I haven't been on a job interview in a long time, but I tell people every time I do a sales call or an introductory call with somebody, which is usually 7 to 10 times a week, I'm on a job interview. I interview almost every day for my
Yes,
own
sir. Yes,
job.
ma'am. That's it. Exactly.
Yeah,
And that's a great mindset that for people to adopt when they're trying to figure out how do I put myself in this position. Think of it, you're running your own company and you're like, well, I'm not in business. I don't want to be in business. You're in business for your family is another way to look at it.
yeah,
You're in business for your family. And you need to sell
absolutely.
yourself to your boss every day to keep you. As we go into turbulent economic times, whether you believe we're in a recession or not, everyone has their own opinion. But you're on that team. You're that go-to person, and which brings us right into how do we know if we're pursuing the right opportunities for our career goals? We talked about a career plan.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think, for me at least, when I make decisions in life or in my career, I'm very feeling and intuition driven, right? So sometimes we have to pause and say, well, how is this career path making you feel? Do you still feel passion for it? Are you still interested in it? And sometimes we have to separate two things. So I'll ask people, is it the company that's a problem or is it the actual work? Because sometimes those two bleed together and we don't know which one it is, right? We might still be happy doing the same line of work if we're in a better cultural fit or have a better boss. So those are two separate problems that might have different solutions. Or is the company and your boss and everybody fine? You just don't feel anything for the work anymore. So we have to really kind of drill down and figure out what's really wrong. And sometimes the work hasn't changed at all, but we've changed. So what worked for us in our career even just 5 or definitely 10 years ago may not be what we need now. So we ourselves evolve and our needs change in our career, or sometimes the job and the market conditions might change. And maybe the career path that you were in is just for reasons outside of your control, no longer viable or interesting to you. So we have to kind of dissect what is really wrong because sometimes we don't know. We think one thing is wrong and it's actually something else. So that's the first thing. And then I think also just doing research, getting curious, getting out there and talking to other people who do other lines of work that might be interesting to you. Even if you don't end up going down that path, you can gain a lot of information. So expanding your horizons a little bit, expanding your network can give you ideas of maybe other career paths or other companies that could be a better fit for you if you're feeling burned out. But we need to discern, is it the company, is it the work, or is it me? What's not working anymore? What has changed? And then that can determine what direction we go and how we want to solve it.
I hear when you say that's one of the reasons we want to have a coach, a professional work with us when we're looking at this career moment and to understand it's an investment of your time so that you know that you're working on the right things. The coach is outside of your immediate sphere of influence.
Yes.
They're not a relative. They're not going to give you the flowery picture. It's not what you're paying a coach for.
Yep.
You want to get the truth. And that's what a coach can do for you. They can look at your career, look at your achievements, really kind of see, and then ask you that point blank question: is it the job or is it you, or is it your boss? Which one
Yeah.
is it?
Yeah.
And then even in a good coach like Lorraine will drill down and won't just accept your first answer. They're going to ask you more questions and really get to the heart of the answer so that you're not lying to yourself. Because if it is simply that you want to change jobs, but your boss is really good, there's an opportunity to get a good recommendation, or maybe that boss knows somebody that can put you where you want to go.
Mhm.
Just some, that's what I was listening. I was like, man, that really makes sense. You gotta, work with someone that's gonna help you get
Yeah.
get outside of your head. What are your thoughts on
Well,
that?
yeah, other people often see things that we don't. Certainly, absolutely. So I think a coach can bring a very objective point of view. And it's really important too that we accurately pinpoint what is causing you to feel disconnected from your work, because if we don't, it happens very often that we go change jobs only to find that we have the same problems. It's just a different name on the paycheck, right? Our problems follow us a lot. And that means we're not actually solving what it is. So maybe it actually is us, and we just need to get out of that line of work altogether. Or maybe just kind of like some people pick bad relationships, some people pick bad jobs. They're picking them for the wrong reasons, right? And they keep changing jobs, but nothing ever gets fixed, right? So we want to avoid that. And that's really what we focus on with coaches is, as coaches, is what is broken. How do we need to fix this? How long have you been feeling this way? Where did this come from? And then we can get to the heart of what change needs to actually happen.
With a career plan, career goals, and help you achieve those goals, which is really speaks to our next question. How can you effectively communicate transferable skills to potential employers? And I want to kind of caveat this a little bit. We talked about artificial intelligence. We talked to our military audience who is transitioning out of the service, and just even looking at what we just talked about, looking at maybe I just need something different. What are your transferable skills? How do we talk about that?
Yeah, you're going to want to be prepared to talk about them both on the resume and in the interview. And those are two separate things, but we're actually going to do it in a similar way. So the framework that I like to teach my clients is an acronym called CAR, Challenge, Action, Result. So what this is you're going to develop a couple of career stories. So these are great examples from your career of major wins, major projects that you worked on, and achievements that you have. And I want you to develop some stories around them that you can share verbally in an interview when they ask you, tell me about a time when you did this, or tell me what experience you have with this skill. You can not just tell them that you have experience with it, but you can actually share a specific example and a story. That is going to be very impactful. And then when you're writing resume bullet points, you can actually weave that story very succinctly into a bullet point and say, what you did and how you did it and what was the result, right? We want, what is the situation? What is the action that you took? And what's the result? So, if you turned around a failing center or division of your company, then you want to share that you came in and overhauled this underperforming division that was negative 20%, and now they're beating their quota by 25%, whatever it is. You want to describe what you did and what was the result and the impact to the business. So that's, again, where sometimes a coach or a resume writer can be really helpful, because we don't always know how to say that. And some people are not confident in their writing skills, but if you give us the input, we can very concisely write those little career stories and bullet points in there that bring out the right skills. So first you need to know what those transferable skills are, which ones do you want to focus on, what is going to be the message you want to convey in your resume, and then translating that into little bite-sized stories that you can write on the resume and also share verbally as examples in interviews.
Yeah, when I hear you say story, when I see that, it's not only does it describe your accomplishments, but it also illustrates your thought process. One, people can relate to stories. They can say, okay, I've done that. And they can see how you address the problem, thought through the problem, and solved the problem, because you tell it in a story and weaving it. The resume gets you in the conversation, but the conversation really talks about you as a person. And I think that starts to also bring out the soft skills, the eye contact when you're telling a story,
Yes.
the way you solved a problem, the way you maybe talk to someone, instead of just saying, I accomplished blah, I had this much sales, I had this result, which is good. I mean, I could read that, but let's bring this resume to life. Let's show
Yes.
people this
Yes.
resume by telling that story.
Yes.
So what may be an example? Go ahead.
I was just saying, yeah, so stories have a logical progression, right? They have a beginning,
Right.
a middle, and the end. That's why our brain is able to remember them and process them versus a fact where you're like, oh, what did they say? What percentage was that? That's so easy for your brain to lose, but a story has a logical progression, So for example, let's say you want to demonstrate your management or your training skills. What you want to think about is, okay, can you share an example of an employee that you worked with, that you trained and mentored? Where did they start and where did they end up, and how did you work with them? So one example that I have shared from my early career when I was a manager was I had 2 employees that I hired myself. I selected them and hired them, and I brought them in at the bottom level, hourly customer service jobs. And both of them eventually, within pretty short period of time, maybe about 2 years, ended up becoming managers of their own centers. Now, I'm not saying that I take credit for 100% of that, but as a manager, if you trained them and hired them and developed them and mentored them, you can take some credit for that. So that's a bullet point that I've had on my resume, that I brought in and hired these 2 entry-level employees and trained and mentored them, and they both went on to become managers of their own centers. That's a specific accomplishment. I started from zero. What did I do? I did their staff meetings, focus meetings, their performance evaluations, one-on-one role plays and trainings. And what was the result? They ended up getting multiple promotions, each one of them. So that's just an example. Insert your own examples, but use that flow very briefly: challenge, action, and result.
And that's what I think employers are looking for today, are leaders. Someone, when you tell me that story, I hear, one, you're able to assess people and you can pick the right people.
Mhm.
Then you can take that talent and you can morph it into results that I need for my company. So if I bring you in, you're going to find the right people because you know how to find good people, and then you know how to train those good people. So when you find someone and say, hey, we need to pay this person a certain amount, I'm going to look, well, that's more than we budgeted. It's like, yeah, but they're worth it. Then I know, based on your story, that it's
Mhm.
true, that if I do invest this investment, then it's going to pay off in the long run. Hire slow, fire quick, right? We never want to fire because that's very expensive. So if we have good key people like yourself, then it makes a big difference. And the stories illustrate that. It really
Mhm.
does. I think that's critical.
I
And
agree.
which would show why we want to be able to identify gaps in our skill set or experience that might be preventing us from landing a job. So AI is coming out, volatile economy is developing, and
Yeah.
companies are changing to adjust to de-dollarization, the China threat, all kinds of geopolitical things, the supply chain things that have popped up in the last few years. So, to say someone doesn't have any gaps, I would challenge that thought. So now we've identified, how do we work through that situation?
Yeah, I think it comes down to three words. Like you said, it's bridge the gap, right? So there's where we are, and then there's what the next job requires. So I think that first we have to identify what that is. And as we've talked about, there's a number of ways we can do that. Sometimes it's as simple as just looking at the job description, but even deeper than that, you might want to do some industry research and talk to people who are in that industry. What are the trends I should be aware of? What are the challenges that an organization like yours is having? So that's why networking can help us dig a lot deeper into that and get really valuable information. And also, there's a lot of blogs and journals, sometimes that are industry specific, that you can keep up to date, so you know what's going on and kind of anticipate trends that are happening. For example, I'm a member of a number of professional associations for people like myself in career services, because I have to be aware of industry trends and how they affect me, and try to stay on top of them. And AI is one of them, and chat GPT and all those things. So that's something that I have to do as well. So I think that's first, is educating yourself and making sure you're joining maybe networking groups, or reading the right journals, or going to conferences and associations where you can stay up to date with the trends that are important to your industry and that are affecting your industry. I think that's number one. And then coming up with a plan for how do I want to obtain the skill? Now that I know what I need, how can I get it? Is it a course? Is it a certification? Do I just need somebody to mentor me? Do I need a full degree again? It could be any number of things. So identifying the gap and doing your research, and then coming up with a plan and a time frame for when you want to achieve it. And the sooner we start that process, of course, the more proactive we are, the better.
And I think when companies look for people and they're creating those job descriptions, they're putting in place skills that they want, not necessarily what they need at the moment, but they're linking to the future. And if you have a plan to fill that gap as one of those skills, you may not have it at this moment, but you have a plan. When you have that conversation, you say, well, my plan is this. It tells them you've thought of it. You know
Mhm.
that there's a gap, that there's a need for this skill. You're putting something in place to get that skill, and you're proactively doing these things. It goes back to, you mentioned again, career plan, knowing where you are, where you want to go, and how that works, which really, you talked about networking. What does networking and information interviews play in the job search process? I think you kind of spoke to that a little bit in the last response. How does this work? What is a informational interview, and what
Yeah.
role does it play?
Yeah, so an informational interview is it's basically when you are having a conversation with somebody to gather information. It could be about a company that they work at that maybe you are interested in working for, and you want to know what is it like there? Is it what's the culture like? Anything like that. Or maybe you're going to pivot from one line of work to another. Maybe you've been in sales within tech and you want to go get into healthcare, pharmaceutical sales. So you might do an informational interview with somebody in pharma so you can learn what are the differences between those two types of sales. So that's really what it's about. It's about I need information, not necessarily looking for a job. An informational interview is not usually focused on generating a job lead. It's about building your network. It's about getting advice, insights, and recommendations from somebody who's in a position to give you that information. And so it's big for career changers. I think that's probably one of the best uses of it. But even if you're just in a job search, you may want to set up informational interviews with people who are maybe working at companies that you might like to target or learn more about and potentially apply to. So there's a number of uses, but I think it's also very useful for determining if a company is a good cultural fit. If you can speak to somebody who either works there or used to work there and find out what their experience is like, that can be very valuable information as well.
So how would you set one of these up? If you have a target company, you don't want to waste somebody's time. So how do you kind of talk to somebody? I know LinkedIn, of course, you can connect that way, but
Mhm.
then you're asking for somebody's time. They're going to
Yeah.
invest time with you to give you information that may or may not be beneficial to them right at this moment. How do you set one of these up?
I think I would be brief and I would be very direct and open about what your intention is in the conversation. I know I don't like anything that kind of smells like a bait and switch. I like people to just be
Right.
really clear
Mhm.
about what it is. And I've had people approach me and ask me for guidance or expertise on things that are career related. So I would be upfront and just let them know, hey, I'm a career changer. I came across your profile. I saw that you work for XYZ or that you have a lot of experience in this or that industry. I'm trying to make connections with people in that industry and do a little bit of research. Would you be open to just a brief 15-minute call? I understand your time is valuable, so I'll make it very efficient and be, very much appreciated. Just a short, simple, and very direct and clear message that states your intention, and also be sure to offer them value. In return, I'd
Right.
love to know what I can do to help you and how I can add value to your network as well, and make good on that. Certainly.
Mhm.
So I think that's it. We tend to overthink it. Like there's some magic words, but just be brief and just be direct and be authentic and honest about what you're looking for. And also know not everybody's going to reply, and that's okay. That's why if you can make a connection through somebody you already know, that tends to get a higher response. So if you know somebody who could introduce you to somebody, I would start with that first. But there's nothing wrong with doing some cold outreach. Just don't be discouraged if some people don't reply. It just might not be relevant or they might not have the time. Doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong necessarily.
And I think professionals, as we talked about before, are glad to help. They know that if you're a professional seeking guidance and information, that it's going to come back to them one way or another. And one way to lead or end the conversation or lead into it is, I'd like to learn more about what your needs are because I have a
Mhm.
network of people that are in the same career field, that I'd like to
Yes.
introduce you to, but I can't help you until I know more about this position, and just
Yes.
leave it at that. And then, like you said, make good on it. Find a connection, proactively look for that. Or if you can't, follow up a few days later, say, I've looked at all my network, asked several people. They're not available yet, but they are interested in this kind of, position in the future or something like
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely.
just being proactive to do that. And you
Yes.
just talked about changing that career. So when should a person consider changing career goals and expectations during the job search process? So I'm assuming that means I'm in the job search process. I come across an opportunity that's a big shift out of my career field or something new, but I see that opportunity. When should I consider that?
Well, I think that so one of the biggest mistakes, I guess, that I find people when a job search isn't working is a lot of times they cast too wide of a net. So they're not very targeted. So I think you need to know pretty clearly what you're looking for, because then the resume that you write and the LinkedIn profile that you have is going to match that. But a lot of people will cast a pretty wide net and have all these different versions of their resume and constantly be tweaking their LinkedIn and things like that. That's usually when it doesn't work. So I think you need to ask yourself, what is it that I really want to be doing, and get a clear target first. Okay. So I think that is probably the most common mistake that people make. But also, so maybe you're in a job search and you're just not getting results. Sometimes you may not need to change the career goal. Maybe you need to change your approach in your job search. Maybe it's the way that you're approaching that and looking for job leads. Something isn't working there. There could be a disconnect between what your goal is or sometimes what your approach is. But I think if something's really not working, it's a great idea to have somebody else objective come in and take a look at it, and maybe they can point out things that aren't working for you. Maybe you think you have the qualifications for this job, but you don't. Maybe you think you're conveying your project management skills in your resume, but you're not. There's a disconnect somewhere, and if you can't figure out what it is, either a friend or a colleague or a coach or somebody can come in and help you see things that you don't always see.
Right. And that, changing that career, I think, you're doing something, right? You're taking action, you're getting in front of people, but the results you're getting back is not what you expected.
Yeah.
So that's why you're thinking, something may not be right, and I may need to shift and change what that might be. Which, as we kind of wrap up our interview, what would you say would be like the three things that, people, what action should they take right now? If after listening to us talk about recession-proof your career, we've had several key points. What would be something you say, let's do this right now? This is what you need to take action on right now.
I would boil it down to three things, which all of which we've talked about. But if there's no other takeaways than these three things, I think this would be it. Expand your skill set as continuously as you can. Be proactive and don't always wait. This is something I hear a lot. Don't always wait for an employer to pay for it. If you have, I know it's hard for some people, but if you have the means to go out there and get that certificate or take that course, you should. Not every employer, unfortunately, will sponsor that, but a lot of people will only do things that an employer will sponsor. And I just think that that's not a good idea. There's a lot of free, even in low cost online courses people can take these days, but take responsibility for your professional development and continuously develop your skills. Then continuously build your network and get creative. Think outside your company, think outside your industry. Have a Rolodex of people that you know and connect with outside of your normal circle. All right. And then I think the third thing is keep those documents up to date. Put it on your calendar every quarter to spend just 30 minutes, maybe even less, updating your resume with your accomplishments. That way you can hit the ground running and have an updated document that is ready to be used. And if you don't know, if you're not good at that, get help writing your resume. Many people do, and it's very beneficial and time saving for a lot of people, but at least get the thoughts on paper and have those metrics and all those accomplishments down and do that on a regular basis. I think if you follow those three things, you're going to go a long way to recession-proofing your career.
Yeah, definitely investment in your career. That's one of the best investments you'll get with the highest ROI is investing in yourself. Waiting for the company pays for it tells the company one or two things, right? That you're not really in this unless I'm in it for you, but if somebody's willing to invest in their time, like say, hey, I've got a course coming up that's going to teach me these things. I think it'll be useful for the company. Will the company pay for it? No, we don't have the funding, blah, whatever they want to say. Okay, can I get the time to go invest in that? Because I see it's a good thing for the company, as well as my career. So I'm going to go ahead and invest in that. And then, the last thing I would say is, when you mention working with someone like a career coach, what's the best way to find a career coach and then work with one? How would you describe that process?
Well, I think that there's a lot of coaches out there. You can look through LinkedIn. You can look just through a Google search. So think about what matters to you. Do you want somebody local that you can work with in person? I will say not a lot of that is happening. There's some people in person, and I still would be happy to bring somebody into my home office if they wanted to, if they were local. I did that for a long time. I don't as much anymore. But think about what your criteria is. Is it important to you to have somebody who's in your geographical area? Is it important to you to have somebody who has industry experience for the line of work that you're in? What matters to you, and what are you looking for in a coach? And then make sure they have a lot of success stories and that there's some proof, right? You want to have reviews, testimonials, something like that from them. So, and I would say talk to a couple different people. It's a great idea to talk to, I'd say, at least 3 people for comparison, because if you've never worked with a coach, you don't really know what to expect. You don't know what questions to ask or how much it costs. And you'll learn that by talking to a number of different people and then being able to compare and seeing what you get for the low end of the cost and what you get for the high end, because there can be a very big difference there. Sometimes things may look the same, but they're not until you really dig deeper and have that phone call. So talk to multiple people, get clear on what you need from a coach, ask lots of questions, and look for reviews as well. And then at the end of the day, go with your gut, go with your intuition, go with the person that you feel like understands you and you have a good connection with.
And I would say that, career coaches make this a personal investment of their time. So they're interviewing you at the same time, right?
Yes.
They're saying, is this going to be a good client for me? Can I
Yes.
help this person? So talking to several allows that to happen both ways. You're talking and interviewing career coaches. They're also talking, interviewing with you. And I think we mentioned in our last interview that, Lorraine knows lots of career coaches. So if it's not a good fit for her, she knows probably someone that it is a good fit for,
Yeah.
and to help you get there, because the professional career coaches are mainly concerned about you as a person and getting the results in your career, and it always comes back and always play it forward, which talks about if somebody wants to interact with you, Lorraine. I'm going to bring up your contact slide here in a second. What is the best way for them to contact you?
Yeah, so they can go to my website, careeruprising.com. They can also connect with me on LinkedIn. Just search my name, Lorraine Rise, Rise, just like the sunrise. A lot of people overthink that or think it's rice. That's all right. But LinkedIn and my website are the best places. There's a place for you to book a call on both of those. You can also, if you want to opt in and join my email community, you'll get a free gift. I have a free video training. The Career Change Roadmap walks you through at a high level, what are the 3 steps that I need to take? What do I need to focus on to get from where I am now to the career I want to go to? So I'll walk you through those 3 steps. You'll get that right away if you want to join my email community. So I would say go to LinkedIn, go to the website, and you can book a call and you can join and connect with me that way.
And you mentioned that video course, which I'll bring up here in a second for people to opt into. What's the benefit? What are they going to get by opting in and going through that video training?
They're going to get action steps. They're going to get direction. They're going to know these are the 3 steps that I need to do if I want to change careers. And it's applicable to any line of work. So no matter who you are, what you do for a living, it's a 3-step process that you are going to walk through, and you'll know, okay, here's my starting point. Here's how I take action, because that's a big thing. I'm all about takeaways and action, and coaching in order to work, it has to be actionable. So I give lots of homework assignments. So you'll have a few little takeaways from that video where you're like, okay, this is my starting point. Now I know how to get started.
I'll bring up the slide real quick and just kind of mention that this brings to mind the things you need to do when you're looking for a career coach. So by investing in this training that Lorraine has put together for us, is that it helps you prepare for that first initial conversation with the career coach, because they're going to ask you all these questions. And if you hadn't had a chance to think through it, then you're just going to you may give answers, but they're not the well thought out answers, that you're going to find the challenges inside that course that are going to make you think about your answers and say, well, is this right for me? Like we talked about earlier, is it the job? Is it the boss? Or is it just me? Why am I changing my career? Those
Yeah.
action steps. And it's a process. That's what I really like about it. It's a process that you can learn and use. And with any process, you can make you more efficient and better. So as we kind of wrap up, Lorraine, any parting thoughts?
I would just say, I think the word that you and I have been using over and over again is proactive.
Right.
That is really the word of the day here. When you think about recession proofing your career, it's being ahead of the curve, being ahead of maybe even your peers a little bit, and really just educating yourself and taking steps now before you find yourself in a bad situation to get everything up to date, have a strong network, and take responsibility for your career overall. So a lot of recession proofing your career, honestly, is a mindset, but then that mindset derives actions from it. So be proactive and take action.
Exactly. Be proactive, take action. By the fact that you're simply on this webinar with us and learning more about how to be proactive says a lot about you as an individual.
Mhm.
So, take the next step, get into the video course Lorraine had. And definitely, as we mentioned before, if you like the channel, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, click the bell so you get reminded of future videos just like this one, as we talk with Lorraine in the future and other career coaches to give you the skills you need to be prepared to move throughout your career. So with that, I really appreciate everyone's time today, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.
Don't hang up. I'm going to end the recording, and I'll trim that part out, but I'm going to